Your engine should start as easy as this. If it sounds like this, you just might have a problem. When nearly all of the engine starting problems I see are not caused by the battery, how do we test that it is actually the battery that's the problem and not the starter motor or something else? Watch the video to find out. If you have a problem with your boat starting, the first thing I suggest you do is check the ignition switch signal wire which goes to the solenoid on your starter motor. 90% of the cases that I look at for people, it's this wire and its failure to connect properly to the solenoid on the back of the starter motor which is the problem. A good, clean, strong connection at this point is absolutely necessary for your boat to start. Diesel engines need a really good battery. Their compression ratio is much higher than a petrol engine, and the air is compressed until it gets hot. When the diesel is injected, it then explodes, and that's why diesels need big starter motors and strong batteries. Now, whether you're using lead acid, or whether you're using AGM, or even a hybrid gel battery, you need to make sure it's in good condition. But the first thing you need to do is to make sure that the connections are good and solid and conduct electricity in the way they're designed to do. Testing your battery to find out what its capacity is or its ability at cold cranking is absolutely pointless if you don't have good connections in the first instance. Now, before we get started, we need to know a little bit of science about batteries, and in particular starter batteries. Starter batteries are pretty much the same as the domestic or house batteries, apart from one big difference. They are designed to give a lot of power for a short time, not a small amount of power for a long time, and therefore the makeup of these batteries is different. Deep cycle sealed lead acid batteries, as the name suggests, are specifically designed for deep cycling applications. They contain fewer plates than their cranking or starting counterparts. These plates are also much thicker. This reduces the total surface area, resulting in a battery that provides lower maximum current but is capable of much deeper state of charge. Engine start batteries have a larger number of thinner plates. The total current output is affected by the total surface area. With thinner plates per battery, the end result is an increased surface area that will provide much more current potential. In other words, more bang for a shorter period. Generally, cranking batteries differ from their deep cycle counterparts, as they have been specifically designed to produce a large burst of current in a short time. This is particularly useful in engine starting applications. Cranking batteries are generally categorized based on their CCA or cold cranking amps. Cold cranking amps is a measure of the total current that they have when they're fully charged that they can discharge into starting your engine. These starter batteries can be flooded lead acid, or they can be gel lead acid, or they could be AGM, absorbent glass mat. They can even be lithium. The important thing to remember is that starting batteries differ greatly from deep cycle batteries, and there are only a few types that can do both adequately. Because of these essential differences, when testing a starting battery, we are looking for different parameters from testing a deep cycle battery, and therefore the testing regime will differ greatly also. Okay, we've got access to the starter battery. We've taken the lid off. Again, the starter battery is very well secured. It looks as though we have a problem with the starter battery. I'll use the GoPro to zoom in. There you go. So the negative terminal of this battery needs a little attention. The positive one is okay, but that may have been causing some problems. I do know that he had some starting issues with this engine. That may be the problem. So the first thing we're going to have to do is take that off, clean it up, and while I'm taking that off, I'll have a good look at the terminal, because it doesn't look, it may need replacing. Let's have a look, see what we can do. There we go. That's pretty corroded. I don't know if you can see that. Let's I'll show you with the GoPro. That's the battery terminal. You can see the nut's pretty corroded. The battery terminal is fairly corroded down there, and that as well. So we need to get that cleaned up and then protected with some dielectric grease. There we go. See, that's nice and clean now. This is all clean, bright metal, and just that terminal there to do, but I'll need both hands to do that. And to clean that nut, what I'm going to do is put it on the thread the opposite way up to the way I took it off, so that I can clean the underside of the nut without sticking the wire brush into my fingers. Without sticking the wire brush into my fingers. Then take the nut off, turn it 180 degrees around the other way, and do the same. Back to bright metal. Okay, I've cleaned up the battery terminal, I've cleaned up the terminal lug, and I've cleaned up the end of the cable. Let's show you the end of the cable on the battery terminal. There's the end of the battery cable, there's the terminal, all nice and clean. I'm not going to assemble that just yet, and the reason I'm not going to assemble it is because now I'm going to do the testing. So the first thing I'm going to do is, once again, this battery has been on charge, it's had time to settle, and I'm going to do the old school load test, drop test. So this is the way that we used to do it years ago. I've kept this machine, so, and you want a really good connection, and I'll just show you with the GoPro. It's going to be upside down, but that's showing at 13 volts. And what I'm now going to do, again, I'll probably have to flip this picture. So that's upside down at the moment. Let's flip it over. And now you should have it the right way up on your screen. And then we push. And that's showing a weak battery. Not good. Now, that inside there, I don't know if you can see that, that gets pretty damn hot. Now, it gets hot because it's a resistance and you're shorting out the battery through this high resistance. So it tends to get a bit hot. I can actually smell the dust burning off it. So give the battery a little time to recover. It's now reading 12.8 volts, I would guess. Let's get another 5 to 10 seconds is what's recommended. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's still coming up as weak. So now let's see what the analyzer does. And first we're going to make some notes. So now I've got all that down. When I get back to my boat and I download the data from the analyzer, I do a little spreadsheet for the people that I do this for. So I'll tell you a bit more about that later on and show you the spreadsheet. But yeah, let's get the analyzer on it. It's now the weekend. Unfortunately, the footage which I took testing the battery, the starter battery with the electronic tester, hasn't come out as well as I'd liked. Wasn't really clear, so I'm going to do it again. Being a weekend, it means that there's quite a lot of activity in the marina, so you may see the boat going up and down quite a lot, and there may be dogs barking and kids playing in the background, but that's all part of life's rich tapestry, as they say. Let's get on with the testing. Okay, so let's start. Hope you can see this reasonably clearly. Start with the battery type, and the type of battery is down 1 to AGM. We just hit the enter. And then how we're going to measure this, well, we know that this is amp hour rated battery. It hasn't got the CCA on it. So we go to amp hours, and you can see there that we can change that up and down. So it's an 100 amp hour battery. And let's start the test by pushing enter, and it's come up. This battery's state of health is 13%. You see that? 13%. State of charge is 100%. And it was able to produce 260 theoretical amps. The internal resistance is 9.42 milliohms. So I think you can see that all there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is it's recommending that we replace this battery. We're just going to print that out so that we have all the details to hand. We transfer that later to our spreadsheet. So the next thing we need to do is we will escape that program, and the next test is the cranking test. So we go to crank, push enter, and it says cranking test, start engine. I say, number one, could you start the engine? So the engine is started. It's now testing. So the cranking time was 2,397 milliseconds, and on cranking it went down to 2.91 volts. You see that there? Very low. So again, I'm just going to hit enter, and now we are going to try the charge regime. So we hit charge, push enter, and we start the charging test. Start the engine and press to continue. So the engine's already running, and it's doing a ripple test. So that's making sure that the voltage is smooth. Now it's saying increase the RPM to 2,500 RPM, and then run that for 5 seconds. And then when you've done that, you press continue, enter to continue. Okay, number one, 2,500 revs, please. And we've pushed continue. It's now testing. So the charging is good, which we kind of knew anyway. Under load it's giving 13.8, unloaded 14.1. The ripple is 5 millivolts. So that's all good. Let's press enter, and what we're going to do now is just go down and print all of that out. So I have all of that data. I'll show you that in a minute, but that is simply the tests done with this electronic battery tester. Much easier than the old-fashioned way. There we go. Okay, number one, tick over. That's this panel rattling, by the way. As the engine hits the right vibration level, this panel here is just rattling. It's not the engine falling out, PD, you're okay. Okay, and shut down. Oh, there we are on the other side. We're now starboard side. Start batteries down here. This one looks like it's in better condition. Same battery, AGM S100S. Let's get the test right and see what it's like, and I'll show you in a second. Well, it's unfortunate that Peter has had to replace both of his batteries, both of his start batteries, as well as his 3 domestic batteries, but he's had, I think he said, 8 to 10 years out of them, which is really good, especially for an AGM. So one of the things that I think this illustrates really well is that battery voltage is not an indicator of a battery's life, its charge, or its capacity. It's simply what the voltage is of that battery. Now this battery was sitting at 13.11 volts, 13.11 volts, and indicating a state of charge of 100%, and yet its state of health was only 13%. And when measured, it was only able to produce 260 amps at cranking, and that's a 100 amp hour battery that should be somewhere near 720 cold cranking amps. It clearly wasn't. And these tables of battery voltage that you see spread all over the internet clearly are misleading when it comes to battery voltage and their capacity. Well, I hope this video has been useful to you, and you see that testing batteries isn't just a case of measuring voltage. You need to have the right equipment, and you need to have the knowledge of how to do it. And hopefully now that you've watched this video, you know how to do it. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget, leave a like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and leave some comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Sail safe. Bye for now.